Welcome to the In Chamber. I'm your host, Tom Schumann. If you notice any differences in sound or overall production quality today, consider it one of the consequences of operating in a coronavirus world. I need to give special thanks to Tony Spatero, our producer, for his efforts at bringing us all together from our remote locations. As I did in our previous episode, I'm going to compare our continuing efforts here at the In Chamber to what you might hear on sports talk shows. You know, when we face a natural disaster or anything that's kind of disrupting our normal society, those sports talk hosts mention how they can be the relief, from that situation. So, to get away from the 24/7 world of coronavirus, COVID-19, state or national shutdowns, economic impacts, and more, we'll just have one or two questions about that today. But the bulk of our conversation will be on the people, the places, the organizations that help make Indiana great. Today's topic is money and new businesses. We're talking with a guy who I calculate to be about 28 years young, but with a whole lot of experience in both worlds that I mentioned. Max Brickman, Managing Director at Heartland Ventures. Welcome to the In Chamber.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Max. As I mentioned, we have to start here. So we're recording here late in March, a couple of weeks before our release date. But in this coronavirus world, what's the most immediate impact on the venture capital, the entrepreneurial worlds that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, the inability to travel is certainly different in a space where we're very used to meeting face-to-face with people and being in front of the companies we're looking to invest in or in front of our investors. We're constantly meeting with people, and that's come to a halt. So it's definitely changed how we do business. We've shifted a lot of what we're doing to supporting our existing portfolio companies and helping the startups that we're invested in to make sure they can weather this and get through it the best way possible. And kind of what we've seen from the startup space is the biggest impact that we've seen is revenue, new revenue generation. It's very difficult in a time like this to meet with new customers and to be able to sell a new customer and sign new contracts. So the growth rate of pretty much every company has at the very best plateaued. So it's been a big change for yeah.
And I would say those challenges probably even greater for some, as you mentioned, some of the portfolio companies, those younger organizations where that cash flow might be even more critical than more established organizations.
Exactly. For the ones that have recently raised, they're in a good spot. There will be a lot of companies that will need to raise, and there's a lot of capital in the system right now, which makes it a lot different than 2008. But it'll be interesting. There's a lot of unknowns ahead.
Right. All right. Let's shift gears away from that. We're going to, all of us are going to continue to deal with these impacts on a regular, daily, and even hourly basis. But let's talk a little bit about your background and the work you're doing. You started and grew your first business, a commercial landscape design company, at age 15. So my question's not about that business, but that age 15, kind of struck me. So a philosophical one to begin. Are entrepreneurs born, or are they a product of their environments?
That's a good question. I think I feel very strongly that they're a product of their environment. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, the most important characteristic is, they have a drive or have a hunger. And if everything works out for you, you're not going to have that drive. So there has to be situations that lead you to, want to have that, that drive to be able to build something and to be able to create something and keep going when things get difficult. And I think that's very much a product of environment.
Talk about your environment a little bit. What was your growing up and influences on you to heading down this career path?
Yeah, for me, I found business really when I, to be honest, hated school. It was a thing where, school isn't for everybody. And I was struggling in school and found an outlet where, I was able to apply myself, and where I saw, tangible results that came from it. And it just clicked with me much more than what I was learning in school. The things I was learning with, first the landscaping company and then transitioning to real estate investment company. It's a different form of learning, but it clicked with me, and I honestly feel fortunate that I was able to do it that early in my life.
Well, when it comes to college, you're at Indiana University, and you're the founder and a leader of a couple different businesses while you're there. It's common that we talk about these real world experiences complementing what takes place on campus. But I'm guessing, based on what you just said, maybe there's a little bit of a reversal where your real world experiences as a founder, a leader, probably came back maybe to what you're doing at the Kelley School of Business.
Absolutely. I mean, at Kelley, there's a lot more real world applications, to be honest, that, majoring in entrepreneurship and finance. I mean, entrepreneurship can be a difficult thing to teach, but I think they did a great job. I think they have the top program in the country, top one or two, and they do an exceptional job of making it, having it be based on real world, which, for me and for other entrepreneurs I've talked to, just clicks a lot more than just reading about something, being able to actually apply it.
So one of the challenges we hear with entrepreneurs is how do you balance your time? So you're in school, again, you're running companies, you're doing everything associated with that. You're also doing your schoolwork, advancing in that area. How did you balance your time at that point? What are some of the tips you might offer people?
It was a fortunate thing of being that age and being able to work 1,000 hours a week.
You just created a new calendar there. 1,000 hours.
Exactly.
A week. That's the key.
Right. Exactly. You just keep adding hours, and but I was disciplined with my time when I was there. I didn't watch TV or I didn't have as much free time. It was really school or work for me, and driving back to Milwaukee, which is where I grew up and where the real estate company and landscaping company were, pretty much every weekend. So making that 6-hour drive Friday afternoon, driving back Sunday night or even Monday morning, and working every opportunity I had to be able to get what I needed done. But for me, it was what I loved, both sides of it, and it was incredibly fulfilling.
6.5-hour drives, and that includes getting through Chicago both ways. That's a challenge right there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right, Max, let's shift to Heartland Ventures. Give the listeners an overview of what you've been doing the last 3.5 years with Heartland, both in Indiana and throughout the Midwest.
Sure. So we're a venture capital fund started in South Bend. So I moved to South Bend about 3.5 years ago after IU, and found that in South Bend there's this huge concentration of family companies, of these businesses. I'm not from South Bend. I didn't really know anyone there other than my girlfriend, now wife, who's going to grad school there, and found when I moved there that there's these family companies that are second, third, there's some fifth generation businesses that have a huge amount of expertise, are doing $500 million up to $1 or $2 billion in revenue, and don't have the ability to access certain technology that's developed around the country. A lot of technology that's developed in Silicon Valley or in Boston goes from San Francisco to New York to Atlanta to Chicago, and eventually it'll make its way to the Midwest, which doesn't make any sense because the buyers of that technology and the experts of whether or not that technology is going to work is here in the Midwest. I mean, if you're developing a logistics software, go to the logistics companies or go to the manufacturing companies. So what we did was we raised a $20 million fund, basically from 30 of these family businesses, of these large companies with several hundred to a few thousand employees, with the idea that we identify technology that's being developed within their industry that could be applicable to them, and then we connect them, and where there's an opportunity for us to de-risk the product, prove that there's product market fit by connecting the startup with the actual customer and having the customer actually say, wow, this is incredible. if this were to be produced, we would love this. We'll become a customer tomorrow. To be able to get that kind of validation before we invest, which allows us to significantly de-risk it. What that also does is now that you have these companies that might be based in San Francisco, these startups that now have a significant amount of their revenue in, let's say, South Bend, it starts to become very appealing for these companies to set up secondary operations here. So there becomes a trend of companies from the coast that are then expanding into the Midwest and setting up operations here because they value the expertise and the industry concentration that exists in places like Indiana, where we're leveraging really the resources we have. So we've made 7 investments so far and have continued expanding into Indianapolis, into Columbus, Ohio, where we'll be raising our next fund, which will really be the same thesis, just with a larger investor base, a larger base of these family businesses that have a ton of expertise and that can help validate this technology.
So Max, as I've read about Heartland and as you communicate out, I see the phrase, and you just talked about it, connecting coastal technologies with family-owned or other companies in Indiana. Is that a little bit of a different approach than maybe some organizations take, or are you tackling it a slightly different way?
Yeah, we haven't seen it, and I think it should happen more. I think there needs to be more conversations between these technology hubs that at least currently are on the coast, and they're obviously developing in the Midwest as well, but the ones that are currently on the coast with these industry hubs that are in the Midwest. We feel there needs to be more communication between the two. And there's a lot of value that would result from it.
Can you give maybe one of your portfolio companies, can you give a specific example of where that connection is made and it's just really paying off as far as what's taking place out there in the marketplace?
Absolutely. So there's a company we invested in called, so I'll talk about StrongArm. So it's a device that goes in your shirt pocket or straps on your chest and monitors movement for industrial athletes. So people that are working in fulfillment centers or warehouses that are doing a lot of lifting and are very injury prone. So it's a device that goes on your chest, and if you're lifting incorrectly or jumping off a forklift instead of getting off, it'll vibrate and let you know that you're doing something incorrectly. But then they're able to provide feedback and deliver information to the insurance company, where they're able to. They did a trial with 2,000 employees where they were able to reduce workers' comp claims by 40%. So this company is based in Brooklyn, but there's a huge application for the Midwestern market, the ability to reduce injuries. And when there's low unemployment and these injuries just don't need to happen in a lot of these manufacturing and fulfillment centers that are in the Midwest. So again, this company was based on the coast. We got involved and said, hey, this could be great for Elkhart, for the RV industry. So we connected them to that industry, and we're able to get the feedback that we needed to be able to say, wow, this really is needed in this space. There's way too many injuries, and what there needs to be. Workers' comp claims are a necessary cost if you're able to reduce it. Everyone really wins in that situation. So with that information, we were able to invest and kind of provide value to each stakeholder.
So Max, how much easier are these conversations with the technology companies on the coast, today compared to three and a half years ago? Because you have success stories, whether they're through Heartland, whether they're through other coastal companies that are investing in the Midwest. How easy is it, easier, or hopefully is it, to start those conversations today?
In the last few years, I think there's been a kind of a shift where people on the coast feel like they're missing something in the Midwest. There's kind of a sense of FOMO that there's value here that they're not seeing because they're not here. That there's startups coming out of here that they're not able to invest in because they're not here, and there's value. And they keep reading about it, but it's flyover country for them. They don't know it. So the ability to provide a level of connection to this region is becoming more and more appealing. And then, for us in particular, the ability to actually deliver on that value and make those connections and generate revenue for the companies we're investing in, where another VC will bring us in, we'll generate revenue immediately after investing. That's delivering on our promise, and that word travels and has certainly made it a lot easier. So sort of combination of regional credibility and Heartland specific credibility over the last few years.
Excellent. Let's. You mentioned starting in South Bend. On this podcast, we've had previous episodes. I think both in year one with Rich Carlton of Data Realty, who's a great board member of the Indiana Chamber, then Brian Ritchie at Notre Dame. The university has become so engaged in the last few years in this area and had some outstanding results with student entrepreneurs and beyond. Talk about that critical role that Notre Dame plays in northern Indiana.
Yeah, I know both of them well. They're both unbelievable. I actually moved to South Bend around the same time Brian did, so I was able to see that whole program spin up, and it's incredible what they built. I wasn't really in South Bend before that, where Notre Dame wasn't South Bend, it was Notre Dame, and they distanced themselves from the city. But the city's changing, and the city's booming, and the university's seeing that, and the university's embracing it, and the university's supporting it, and helping that transition for a lot of reasons. And Brian's helping, and Richard, they're both helping to boost up the community. I sit on a board with both of them, and there's a lot of good that they're both doing. I think Notre Dame has the ability to really bring a unique microphone to South Bend, where a comparable city of 100,000 people wouldn't have the level of exposure that being in South Bend provides. The ability to have access to those resources, you don't get that in a city of that size. And the fact that they're making it available to people within the community through the Idea Center and through other programs is just wonderful. So what I'm really excited to see come out of that as this continues to develop and as they continue to build that out is increasing student retention. The student retention of students staying in South Bend after graduating Notre Dame or even staying in Indiana is incredibly, incredibly low compared to other universities. But by helping these students create entrepreneurial opportunities within the city and connecting them to people within the city is going to help them lay roots, see value in the community, visit downtown, visit local businesses, start developing relationships that allow them to stay and will only help the economy grow.
Yeah, that's excellent. So when people throughout the country, throughout the world, hear Notre Dame, you've got their attention. So as you said, an amplified voice for the entire region. Let's talk Mimir for a moment. Easy for me to say. That's MIMIR, startup based on Purdue technology that went west before coming back to Indianapolis. Now, we included a story on that journey in our Biz Voice magazine in late 2019. As I understand it correctly, that was Heartland's first investment. It was a company that was acquired last year. Talk about your experience with that and how that worked out so well.
Sure. It was. We're excited for them. We're excited for their acquisition. We've been bullish on them from the beginning. We really connected with them, when they were still out west, before they came back out here. But it's a technology to help automate the grading of computer science courses. Now a lot of students are taking computer science courses instead of cursive, as an example. This helps be able to grade that. But then it also is able to convert that and use that information to help with hiring and placement. So now that the proficiency of certain students in a certain programming language, you're able to then match them with job opportunities or internship opportunities in that space, which from our perspective, a lot of the companies that we work with, a lot of the investors that are in our fund that are these operating businesses are starting to see more and more of a need for development talent. And that can be difficult when you're in Elkhart. There isn't that surplus of that type of talent there. So the ability to have a resource that connects proficient students within what they need with the companies was something that our investor base needed and saw a huge amount of value in. So we're thrilled with the acquisition and very happy for Pra, the founder.
Max, let's talk about Indiana regions for a moment. We discussed kind of the South Bend area, northern Indiana. Here in central Indiana, we hear a lot and we see the momentum that's taking place. And it's helped by the size, the density of some of the companies. And that's not going to be exactly the same in the South Bend and Evansville, the Fort Wayne, other places. What are some of the things those communities, those regions are doing and maybe need to do even more of to help in that battle for whether it's dollars or companies or talent?
I think a lot of these regions, Fort Wayne, South Bend, I've seen it most. I haven't been down to the southern part of the state. I need to more, but I've heard great things as well. They're helping to engage the community and get community support with a lot of the startups that are being developed, so that these entrepreneurs are not going it alone, that they have support from the community, whether it's money or talent or advice. They're starting to build this infrastructure of resources that are available. But I think something that exists in South Bend and Fort Wayne that could be leveraged more are why one of the reasons I love South Bend and was so interested in South Bend was the density of these operating companies that can act as early customers, as sort of beta customers for these startups that are developing there. So if you're a startup coming out of Fort Wayne, you have such a great opportunity. Even though it is a smaller city, you still have an unbelievable opportunity to have easy access to some unbelievable large companies. And because the community is so tight knit, it becomes very easy to get to those businesses. People are willing to make introductions, and the company owners are willing to test new technology. So I think there's more opportunity to be able to leverage that and grow that out.
You mentioned earlier that currently working on your next fund in Columbus, Ohio, but you've also set up expanded operations into Indianapolis and Central Indiana. Talk about that, what you're doing, what you're focused on in this area of the state, and how things are going through these first few months of that activity.
Absolutely. Through Fund One, we obviously spent a lot of time in Indianapolis. There's so much going on, but we recently hired a new principal based there, Connor McGinnis, who's helping us with that expansion. And the focus is similar to Northern Indiana, but there are great privately held companies in Indianapolis that oftentimes fly under the radar, but are incredible multi-generational businesses that have a ton of expertise and can help validate technology that we're identifying on the coast. So our goal of expanding into Indianapolis is to identify more of these companies so that we can build relationships and that they can have direct access to the technology that's coming about, so that they're not passive observers of the technology that's being developed, that they have a voice in that process.
Max, I'm going to reference our Biz Voice magazine once more. We have a story in our current issue that we did on Infosys here in Central Indiana. I've been here, for 2 years now, and it's development that's taking place. Rich Cardwell, leading the operations here in Indiana, gave us this quote. Now, he's talking mostly about talent, but I want to read this to you and kind of get your perspective. He said, and again, talking about talent, it's either we're going to win or we're going to lose. Either we win or Nashville wins or Cincinnati wins or Columbus wins. That's where the talent is going to go. That's where people are going to move. Do you agree with that it's a bit of a winner-take-all approach, or is there room for a number of, we'll say, Midwest cities to thrive in this area?
It's a bit of a headline-worthy comment, but I don't disagree with it. I think we want every city to succeed and we want every city to develop, but there's two ways that cities are able to develop their talent base, and they can develop it organically through universities and training, which is something all cities should be doing, and that's not a winner-take-all situation. That's something everyone should be doing, every community should be doing. But then there is the attraction side of the students that are not staying in their hometown or that are choosing to go to a certain community. And those cities are going to have a spike in talent. They're going to have a greater density and influx of talent that's moving there. And over the last several years, places like Nashville and Austin have been doing incredibly well with that by attracting that talent. So I think part of the equation, he's absolutely right. I think the other side of the equation is still very much within our control by increasing training and talent development.
Well, Max, what's next for Heartland? What are some of the key things going forward? I know we mentioned early on there's certainly the uncertainty around the current economic situation, but what's your focus as an organization?
Our focus now is to support our portfolio companies. That's who we really are here for. We're investing in them, and we're taking a risk with them. And if there's a time where they need support, that's when we need to be there for them. And that's, we're making ourselves as available as possible to be able to do that. There's a lot of uncertainty over the next couple of months, and we want to make sure we and our portfolio companies are as prepared as possible.
Can you go beyond that? I know it's difficult to know exactly, but let's just say this current situation wasn't taking place. Some of the bigger picture things that Heartland's looking to accomplish maybe in the next couple of years.
Sure. Yeah, we're looking to expand out into Indianapolis and Columbus. Honestly, that's our focus, is to meet more of these privately held, mid to large, typically family businesses. To be able to develop relationships, to understand the technology needs that they have, where they see opportunity in the market, where they see risk in the market, so that we can then inform our investment decisions. The more connections we have like that, the more information we're able to get, the more we can communicate that to the groups that we work with on the coast, so that there can be this constant flow of communication, that there's a feedback loop, that VCs and startups on their coast are hearing what Midwestern businesses have to say. So our goal over the next couple of years is to increase that base.
Excellent. A couple questions before we wrap up then. For a guy who was driving, 12 hours a week or so while he was in college, back and forth so he could work on the weekends and run some companies, obviously not a lot of spare time there. How about now, when you do have time away from business? What are some things you enjoy doing?
Sure. Something that probably resulted from that. I'm working on my pilot's license, which there's a small municipal airport outside of South Bend in Goshen, Indiana, where you can fly in kind of an older 1980s Cessna and a small single engine plane and work on the private certification. Not that I'm going to be actually flying for any practical reason, but I think the ability to learn that and to be able to fly is an incredible experience.
Excellent. That is something. So I referenced in my introduction, I took a guess that you were about 28 years old. Was I close?
You're exactly right.
Well, how about that? That doesn't happen very often.
Great, it's good research.
Well,
yeah.
Doesn't exactly right. Doesn't happen very often. Tony and others can tell you that at the chamber. So you've accomplished so much at such a young age. Congratulations on that. My final question, and it kind of brings us all together. The question is, what does success mean to you as you think about the work you do, as you think about personally with family and other things? But at the end of the day, if someone was going to say to you, what does success mean, or what is a great day look like, how would you answer that?
So I know the topic of this episode is money, but for me it really isn't about money. And when I was 15, I didn't really care about that either. That wasn't driving me at 15. I think it was just the ability to have an impact on the community or any of the industries that you're working in, to be able to do something and see the result of it is incredibly fulfilling. And starting with landscaping, of being able to see the tangible impact of building something, to real estate, to having that be tangible, to what we're currently doing, of being able to provide access to technology for operating companies here, and to be able to bring coastal job opportunities to the Midwest, where relevant. That's something we're proud of, and something that I honestly love to do. So that's really what drives me.
Well, Max, Indiana's the winner. Milwaukee's a great area. Wisconsin's a great state, but we're glad you came to Indiana. It's IU. Thrilled that you stayed, and are doing such great work throughout our state and throughout the country.
I'm just glad I haven't been kicked out. So thank you.
All right. We've enjoyed our conversation with Max Brickman, Managing Director at Heartland Ventures. Just a quick reminder before we leave. Again, we'll be back in 2 weeks with our next conversation. But as we continue to work through our current pandemic situation, do visit indianachamber.com/coronavirus. We strive to provide government, business, health resources for you as we communicate out to our members and others throughout the state. We hope you'll benefit from that. Once again, thank you for listening to the In Chamber. We will return in 2 weeks.